My name is Heidi Beierle, and I wrote a report on bicycle tourism as a rural economic development vehicle, which looks at the bicycle tourist typology, who the cyclists are who ride the roads, and also looks at the different kinds of infrastructure and services and attractions that are available in communities, regions, and states. I gave them names based on the general characteristics of their patterns out on the road. The first category, the shoestring cyclist, being one that travels on a shoestring budget, and they're spending basically $0 to $15 a day, maybe at the most $30, but that would kind of blow their budget. Mostly the comfort zone around $15. And then the high-end group, because they're easier, I think those two groups are easier to distinguish from one another. The comfort cyclists, they're most interested in being comfortable. They don't want to carry a lot of weight. They want to sleep in a bed. They want to have food, you know, made for them or just readily available. So they're spending between $75 and $100 a day generally. And then the middle range I call the economy cyclist, because there's something they need to economize on somehow, although maybe it's not a very precise term for them, but they're averaging about $50 a day, meaning that some days they may spend nothing and other days they may spend $100 or $150, or it just depends on what they might do. They might camp for a series of days and then come into a town and stay in a nice hotel and visit a lot of places. So they may also economize on time and travel more distance, where some of the distances break down based on spending too, where your shoestring cyclists will travel further. That's one way they can save on money, is the more times you stop means the more money you spend generally. So if you travel longer distances, you're stopping fewer times. Whereas the comfort cyclists are traveling between 50 and 75 miles a day, regular stops, spend money, stay in a motel. The economy cyclists could be all over the place. They could be traveling at 50 miles a day but camping every time, or they could be going 120 miles a day and then staying in a motel. So that all kind of balances out. Cyclists are traveling through areas at a much slower pace than they are driving through, than people would be driving through it. And because of that, they're likely to spend more time in the community or the area, taking in the sights, the scenery, the culture, whatever happens to be there and available. And they're also stopping more frequently. So they're getting, you know, like in a car, you get out and get a soda or whatever it happens to be. A cyclist is doing that much more frequently. And at least in terms of traveling within a region, they're stopping more frequently to sleep too, since the distances are not quite the same in a car. So the benefits to rural communities are really high, and the location is also very appealing, since cyclists prefer to travel less busy roads. And a lot of times the rural communities are where they are because of historic transportation patterns that maybe are no longer. So the cyclist is a really good demographic. You're not necessarily going to get a whole lot of people off an interstate or a major highway, but you could very likely bring a lot of cyclists to your area. So looking at how rural communities as a regional cluster can attract cyclists to destination sites or scenery, resources of that nature, has a huge benefit. An area that I thought had paid particular attention to the fact that there were a lot of cyclists coming through is in eastern Colorado on the Trans-America Trail, where the very small communities and the services are spaced very far apart, but all the communities have gotten together to put together maps and resources to help cyclists locate the businesses during the hours of operation and do what they could to make their stay in that sort of inhospitable environment much easier. So I thought that was a good example of it. A very small, simple thing that they can do is put bike-friendly outside. I don't know how many businesses I went to because they had a sign like that, and I didn't care if they meant motorcycles or not. That's a really easy thing to do. And also, in that regard, having a place to park a bike, or you know, lean it or something, a place where it's kind of out of the way but still visible so you could see it from inside. That's a really easy thing. And little bike decorations. I would also notice those things. Like, oh, they must be bike friendly. Look, they've got a little bike on the wall or a little bike picture or something like that. And I always found too that any business that understood that cyclists share information word of mouth knew, you know, they were bike friendly. If you heard people talking about a business down the road, like, oh yeah, you got to stop at such and so place or whatever, I would always follow up on those suggestions. Anytime anybody said, hey, you got to check this out, I would always do that. So I think businesses that understand that, you know, the customer service is a really important part of why a cyclist would share that information. But I think that's also a really easy thing to do. Hey, tell your friends, or tell the next people you see on the road to stop here, or follow us on Facebook, or, you know, however it is they happen to get the information chain going. I really enjoyed meeting the people. I loved it when, you know, my idea about how it was going to be was totally wrong. I loved it when people surprised me, and that was really great. I met so many fascinating people who I wouldn't have met otherwise. One of the things that I thought was really important about the trip was coming to appreciate being an American while I was out there. That when I left, I kind of thought, you know, I was never super proud about being an American. I was like, I don't know, we're always kind of like bullies and this, that, and the other thing, and I'm like Canadian or something when I'm traveling, you know. I don't, for whatever reason, I didn't want to be an American. And then traveling through America and really experiencing it and really seeing who the people were and the different places, it totally changed my mind about that.